If I may, before we start, I'd just like to introduce a couple of people who are here actually from the crew. Is Alan Howarth here? Okay. First, I would like to introduce the production manager of the picture. This was her first DGA picture, and she went on to have an illustrious career, and she still talks about the last day, which was 32 hours. If you could just stand up and just wait to applaud till I'm finished with them. Ginny Venkat. Ginny, could you stand up? And also the amazing photography from A to Z that was done by Gary Tilgis, who was my first roommate when I came to Los Angeles. We went to the American Film Institute together. And he's also the only person I know who's ever won an Oscar, Gary Tilgis. And the amazing music was done by this incredible composer that I had such a pleasure to work with, Alan Howarth. And the production executive of a film who spent every day with me preparing and shooting and posting and being a great support. And he also played the bus driver, the production executive of Retribution, Brian Christian. Thank you.
Also, just noting for those who didn't notice, Guy played the irate cabbie in the film. Cigar chomping cabbie.
The fun part of that is that I play the same cabbie with the same wardrobe in every single one of my films. So I can't ever do a Western because there's no cabs in a Western.
You could have been an irate stagecoach driver. Let's start at the beginning, all the way back. Because I know when I first saw this movie, one thing that I was taken by, I love horror movies. I've seen God knows how many. And the thing that draws me to horror movies usually is that they have these interesting ideas. They're not always that well made. And this movie, I was really surprised. I was like, this movie's really slick and ambitious. And I remember when I looked you up, I was, unlike a lot of horror movie directors where they've often only even made two things. They'll have two credits on the IMDb, that movie and then a movie I never heard of. You had a pretty great TV career even leading up to this. Guy directed some episodes of what was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid, The A-Team, among other things. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about your career and when you chose to segue into making Retribution?
Came to Hollywood, went to the American Film Institute, made a $500 movie. They used to shoot black and white. I didn't want to shoot black and white because I figured the studio didn't like black and white. So I actually took the last $500 and rented a color camera, which Gary shot, to shoot my student film at DFI. It was $500 a day for one of those big videotape cameras, not like today. And I couldn't afford more than, a one-day rental, but we were shooting 4 days. So I waited till there was a 3-day holiday, and I went in on a Friday, and I said, I need a camera for Friday morning shoot. I'll bring it back at midnight. And they said, we're closed at midnight because Monday is a holiday. And I said, what do you want me to do? He said, well, bring it back Tuesday morning. And that's how you get a 4-day rental out of 1 day. And I'm actually the first person who has ever shot color film at the American Film Institute. And I will never forget, sort of a theater like this where we showed our films. And when the film came up, there was a big gasp because it was the first color film they had ever seen at the AFI. And, we're not supposed to have credits. I had credits. You're not supposed to have music. I had music. I wanted to make a little 20-minute movie that I could use as a showpiece. And after it was over, I was brought onto the stage and told that I had broken all the rules, and they were confiscating the master, which, by the way, was 3/4-inch tape in those days. Of course, I had made 15 copies already, and I had that at home. And that film opened the door to Universal Studios, where I became a director, and we're shooting a lot of action-type shows, like police shows and things like that. And then I had a dream to move on to features, and I love The Exorcist and possession stories. And me and Lee sat down and wrote Retribution. It took 3 years to find the money. This was not something that was going to be made by studio, and for a low budget, I couldn't afford any stars. So I knew it would have to be independent financing. For 3 years, I was directing television, while talking to every guy that was a millionaire that the friends of mine knew or anybody knew. I would travel and talk to them and bring my script. And finally, I lucked out. I just really lucked out. A friend of mine told me this guy in Chicago who had just turned 30 and got a $100 million trust fund and wanted to be a producer. And I met him, and we got along great, and he loved my idea. And he put up the money, one guy. It's never happened before. It will never happen again. I've never heard of any independent movie only having one investor. You usually have 50, 60, 70 who put up maybe 30, 40,000 each or something. So that's how Retribution was made. After 3 years of looking, we finally scored and were able to go into production.
Yeah.
He's going to ask that question shortly.
Yeah. Talking about those 3 years that you were working on it, again, what really struck me in the movie the first time I saw it was, if nothing else, was the sheer ambition. I mean, a bus crash. You don't see that a lot in these little independent horror movies. And I guess I call it a little independent horror movie because it was, but it didn't feel little. I mean, it opens with kind of a classic Hollywood movie style, crane up to the guy, the jumper on the roof. What made you stick to your guns to do this movie versus kind of a standard, let's say, Cabin in the Woods with 5 teenagers movie that's usually cheaper and easier to get off the ground?
I hate those. You work a lot and you hope to follow your passion and follow your dream. And my dream was to make a feature. And it's every body's dream, every filmmaker's dream to, even if you're doing commercials or if you're doing TV or if you're doing documentaries, if you're doing whatever, most of us have a dream to finally make a 2-hour story. So when we finally get there and we finally find $1.25 million, which is what this budget was about, we really pour our souls into it. And of all the films I've made, this is the one that's closest to me because it was the first one. And I think you'll hear that from other filmmakers about their first one. And you kind of sit down and try and max out as much as you can, not only in the writing, but in being able to put production value like the bus crash, like the rain scene at the end. Rain is very expensive to put together, and everybody's soaking and turning off water and having water buses around to feed their shower heads and all the rest of it. But what you want to do is try and put in as much production value into your movie as opposed to, I only have so much money, and what can I do to get away with it, and can I make a small cast, and can I have a cabin in the woods? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go for it. You never know if you're going to make a second feature. So when you get a shot to make the first one, I think you pour your heart into it, you assemble the right people around you, and you go for it. So all the production value in this film really comes from the cast and the crew. I thought they did an amazing job. Dennis Lipscomb was amazing as the lead and playing these 2 incredible roles. And Suzanne Snyder was great as Angel. And, of course, Leslie Wing was amazing, in my opinion, as a psychiatrist.
How did Hoyt Axton end up in the movie? Was that someone you had an idea for the part, or was he just suggested by casting?
I had worked with Hoyt on a TV show, a police show. He was a regular, and we became friends because he was always at the craft service table. And when I finally got the money to make this, I turned to him. I mean, we were close friends. He came to my wedding and everything, and so we had that kind of a friendship. And when the time came, I couldn't afford anybody because this was a SAG minimum picture. Everybody made SAG minimum weeklies, and so you don't ask Hoyt Axton to do that, but I did, and he was so kind, he said yes. So we were able to schedule him for a week, so he worked for a week and really did me a favor, and he's the only name in the movie. I don't know if you know this or not, but I think him and his mother are responsible for writing Joy to the World.
They are.
Remember that song? Hoyt Axton. No, very few people know that.
Did you ever consider having him do a song for the movie?
No.
Couldn't afford him.
No. There's really no singing in the movie. The 2 songs, the one in the reggae club and whatever, we bought those, but all the music was composed by Howard.
And the effects in the movie were done by the great Kevin Yeager. Did you already know him, or how did he get involved?
See, when you don't have the money, you gotta go out there and find the best that you can get. You gotta get every single person in every single department, from wardrobe on up to makeup, effects, hair, everything, and you gotta fight to get those people. And you got to really, schmooze them and get them to work for you for a lot less than what they usually work. And usually, they got to like the script and they got to like wanting to be a part of it. I mean, there was another movie, believe it or not, where I looked so hard for somebody to build me a monster, and I found that guy. Everybody was saying, go to that guy, go to that guy. And I went to him. And his name was Jim Cameron. And I hired Jim Cameron to build a monster. We were close friends for about 3 months because he was the genius of the time. So when I was doing this film, I really needed a great special effects guy. I mean, cutting somebody's arm with a torch and busting their face with a grill. I mean, and building a carcass to put the poor guy in the carcass. I mean, you really needed somebody extremely good, and all the extremely good special effects guys are very expensive. And I found this kid. His name was Kevin Yeager. He was just a kid working out in the field, but he was doing really cool stuff, and I really liked him, and he said he could do this shit. And I said, great, let's do it. And he said, I can only give you one take of every single shot, only one take. Because I can't build 2 arms, I can't build 2 heads, I can't do that, 2 carcasses, because you don't have the money for me to do that. So I agreed. So when we were ready to shoot, I had to make sure that take was going to be good. But you have to find ways to do things that are unusual. I'm going to give you a real fast example. The green eyes, that's a really expensive, if you're going to do it through a lab or something, that's really expensive to get green glowing eyes. And we couldn't do it. We didn't have a budget for it. And over a 3-month period of trying to figure out how to do all this stuff, I went to get my eyes checked. And part of getting my eyes checked was he put some green stuff in my eyes and turned off the lights and put on a blue light, which some of you might have in your ophthalmologist visits. And they use it to look inside your eye. And I said, are you serious? So I got dentists to go get lenses, contact lenses, and we got a bottle from my eye guy, which was this incredible liquid. And he put the lenses in the liquid, kept them there, and when I was ready to shoot, he would take them out, put them on, and then Gary had to shut the lights around him so he would be lit as close as possible with a blue light. It was a black light, because only with a black light do they glow. So it was a real technical difficulty because black lights put out very, very little wattage, and it was very tricky to light, but it worked, and we got glowing eyes. And we did it with a set of contact lenses and a nice actor who didn't mind putting them on. And a little bottle of green juice. Who knew that would work? But that's what happens when you have to make a low-budget movie. If you care about the movie and you're getting your great shot to be able to do it, you got to figure out how to do all that stuff. But that's how we did the green eyes.
I want to talk a little bit about the art in the movie, especially because a perfect example, again, when I first saw this movie, I was constantly surprised by the directions it was going, because you kind of start to think that you get what the story is, and you're like, okay, so like this is going to happen and that'll happen, and then usually what I was think was going to happen wouldn't happen, and it just keeps going to these really unique spots. And I think for me, when the moment where I was first like, okay, this movie's something weird and special, is where they go to the Neon Museum and then walk into that room that just has a giant Easter Island head in it. I saw at the credits the Museum of Neon Art, but that Easter Island head, was that something you just built, or would that exist somewhere?
Our production designer actually built that. It was made of cardboard. And it was in the warehouse where we were shooting other stuff. So that's why we had to build like little walls that make it look like it was part of a gallery, but it actually didn't take place at all anywhere near the gallery. But when I saw the museum down there and we went on a scout, I thought, wow, what a great place to get stoned.
Yeah.
So it all worked out for the film because I needed to be able to relax the audience a little bit and get you to enjoy the love story that was going on between the two of them. And it was a cool way to do it quickly by getting them stoned and going to this museum. But the actual giant sculpture where the blood was going to come out of and all that, we built all that. It was built out of basically cardboard. We had a brilliant production designer, brilliant. His name is Rob Wilson King. He went on to have an incredible career, but I caught him at just the right time.
And that's the kind of thing that I think, again, typifies the movie, because I know when every dollar counts on a movie like this, I don't know if that conversation ever did literally happen, but somebody would be like, do we really need a room that just has this giant head sculpture in it, but the fact that you did that, it's like such an indelible, odd thing to see in the movie. So I guess my question is, did you ever consider not having that, and why was that kind of the thing that you felt was worth the amount of time to take for just that one scene?
Well, the scene has to start in a nice, romantic way and end badly with them having to leave through the back door. So something's got to happen. And you've got this museum, and I can't mess up the museum, and I can't break anything in there. So I got to build whatever I need in a separate spot to be able to make this work, where we can do the blood thing. So the museum and the head all worked out with the idea of them getting stoned and Angel being able to light a joint and get him to relax a little bit and enjoy life for a few moments before we zap you again. But a lot of things like, when you have a problem like this and you don't know what it is, a psychiatric problem, especially if you are, possessed. You go to church, so we had to have a church scene where he turns maybe to, that as maybe looking for help. Or he goes somewhere where Angel says, hey, I know this guy who can help you. This like a really weird Jamaican guy at a Jamaican club. And, that came because I went to Jamaica and proposed to Jackie in Jamaica, and I loved reggae, and I wanted to make a reggae scene in the movie. And it all seemed to work for me. That where is he going to turn to at the end? Well, he'll go to a reggae club and deal with this weird guy who has a snake around him. By the way, that was a 2-day scene, and the snake died that night.
Oh.
Forget that. I had a problem with continuity.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't under the snake. And we get back in the morning, and they tell me the snake was dead. That's one of the really weird stories of a movie, that the snake would die overnight. But anyways, and that guy didn't like putting the snake on his neck at all. So you take a lot of these personal things, then you got to work it into the story, script-wise. And that's what screenwriting is about. It's taking a lot of personal stuff and being able to tell a story visually. And if this scene is going to start with an ambulance driving through Los Angeles to get to a suicidal scene, you got to build that. And if you got to build, Halloween, there's got to be people there on the pavement in costumes, and it all starts to make sense after a minute, and then all of a sudden you're involved in this suicide thing. So you can't just write suicide on the piece of paper. You got to be able to visually tell the story of what happens. Well, let's start with this ambulance going through LA, and we'll start with the opening credits and the main credit, and then we'll move from there. Later on, we'll bring in the reggae club, calm people down a little bit before we zap you again. And that's what great suspense thrillers are about. They're about being able to go up and down of a story so we can take an audience on this incredible experience like I went on when I saw The Exorcist. I mean, that film blew my mind, and I was deeply, profoundly moved by that movie and the experience of watching The Exorcist, which I knew nothing about, and I'm not Catholic, so for me it was like, oh, wow, what is all that? So visual storytelling is why I became a filmmaker, and why all filmmakers make films, is because we love to tell stories visually.
Well, and I've been dying to go back to what you said up top. Can you tell us a little bit about this 32-hour final day of shooting?
We were behind schedule. We were doing the big scene in his room at the end when, all hell breaks loose, and the paintings and typewriter and all that stuff. And, we didn't make it, and I asked the crew if they would be kind enough to just stick it out until we got everything we needed. It was the finale. We didn't have a movie without that scene. And to great credit to crews everywhere that really care about their work, and remember, this is a real low-budget movie, they stayed. All of them stayed. And we shot 32 hours. And you have to feed them every 6 hours, so we fed them 5 times. And it's incredible because my wife, Jackie, came to see me, and then she left. And she came back the next day dressed in different clothes, and then she left. And she came back a third time to see me with, again, different clothes. It was amazing. But we shot 32 hours, which in the world of the people who worked on Retribution, like Jeannie and Brian and Gary, who stuck it out. And they believed in the movie and they wanted to finish it. We finished it. And I'm very grateful for them.
Can you talk a little bit about then the film's release and kind of its life since then? And maybe it make you happy to know I had a bunch of shows this month, and whenever hyping that this show was coming up, there would always be people in the audience who would cheer for it. So, in the horror community, it is a decently known enough movie. How do you feel it was received at the time it came out?
This is a crazy story and a great tragedy for me because of what happened. But this happens to filmmakers. And it happens, and it's called an executive changeover. And everybody has connections at different studios, different this, different that. But if a person that likes you and brings your movie in or buys your movie or gives you a movie gets fired, you don't have anybody left and you're thrown out because the new guy doesn't want the old guy's people. So what happened was when we finished the movie, we sold foreign first. There's only 2 sales to make. We sold foreign rights. And we made a huge hit at the market here in Los Angeles. There's 3 markets around the world. The reason we made a hit is because most independent movies aren't that well made, like you said. A lot of times they're out of focus. The music isn't so hot. They're not cut well. They're done by people who haven't had a lot of television experience like I did, and I was very lucky to have that. So a lot of those first films are not really great product, and you see them at the markets because they're trying to sell around the world. Well, we were really hot at this market, and we had like 7 offers, which was amazing. And we got $750,000 just for foreign rights, which at the time was incredible for $1.25 million movie. So then we went to sell domestic, because there's only 2 sales to make. And I met the Weinstein brothers that we all have heard about lately. At the time, they were up-and-coming young distributors, and they were really hot. If you had an independent movie, you wanted to go with those guys. Because soon after my movie, they got Sex, Lies, and Videotape and Zoomed from there. So we all knew they were really hot. And they came up with an offer for domestic for $1.5 million, just for domestic rights, before anything happens. And that's the moment. We all have certain moments in our lives, big moments, where we make certain decisions that are good or bad, and we go down different journeys. For me, that was a milestone moment. Because the Weinstein brothers, who were really hot, looking for the next big independent film, ready to smash it out everywhere in the United States, got outbidded. Somebody came in with a $2 million offer. And that somebody was the president of a United Artists theater chain. So me and my investor sat down and said, what are we going to do? Do we go over young Weinstein brothers who are ready to explode this movie? And they would have. They were really good at what they did. That's how they became so big as they did. And do we just take $1.5 million, or do we take $2 million, an extra whole $500,000, and go over the biggest theater chain in the United States that doesn't need a distributor? They already have a theater, so we're going to be in every theater of United Artists. In that moment, of course, you would have, I did, my investor did, we chose United Artists deal, and we said no to the Weinstein brothers. And we took the $2 million. $2 million plus the $750,000. This movie was $1.5 million in profit before anybody had ever heard about it. And I was really excited about United Artists Cinema. They were going to put it out. They started doing the commercials and the posters and all the rest of it. The guy loved the movie, the head of it. Then what happened? He got fired. One day I get a phone call. The guy's been fired. I don't know why. What do you mean? My movie is supposed to come out in 2 months. Sorry, new guy. We have to wait for a new guy to come in, new genius. And of course, the new genius doesn't want any of the pictures that the old genius who got fired bought. I even went to find the CEO of United Artists Theaters, which was incredibly difficult for me to do, to sit him down and say, your new guy is about to blow $2 million deal that you already gave me by just dumping the movie. And he talked to him, and the guy eventually said, okay, they got a poster. They got a big billboard on Sunset. They got opened it in 3 theaters in L.A. and 10 theaters in Oklahoma. I don't know why Oklahoma. And that was the end of it. And nobody has ever heard of Retribution. And my career at that moment did not go the way it should have gone if the Weinstein brothers had put this through, like they've done such great stuff as far as promoting films and promoting young filmmakers like Tarantino and Sex, Lies, and Videotape and all those guys. This was right at the beginning. These guys were just beginning in 1987. So we took the money, we took the deal of the United Artists Theaters. We made money. The investor was happy, he got his money back and made $750K. It was the biggest payday of my life, and I never got the same opportunity ever again. Opportunities like this only come once or twice, and you got to be at the right place at the right time and make the right move, and I didn't. In retrospect, anybody would have done exactly what I did. It just didn't turn out for me. So the picture was dumped. Nobody's ever heard of it unless you open up in theaters and get reviews and people will write about a movie. Nobody ever hears about it. One of the reasons why horror, suspense, thriller fans have heard about the movie is because in 2012, which is 6 years ago, I finally got approached for an offer to bring out the DVD because there was no DVD ever made in 1987 because we were at VHS days. So the movie came out on DVD just 6 years ago. So it was the 25th anniversary of Retribution, and that's how I think most of horror fans heard about the movie was when that happened because that sold out pretty quick, and they had to reprint 3 times. So that's what happened with Retribution. That's why you never heard about it.
But the fact that it sold out, I think, showed, because it was on VHS, technically, right? It did come out on VHS?
VHS, yeah. Remember Blockbuster stores, they really needed product. They bought it as well. They put it out on VHS. But it doesn't matter. If you don't come out theatrically, if you don't get reviews in all the papers and magazines, nobody ever hears about you. Nobody knows who you are, and you don't move on to another big picture. It doesn't happen. And that's exactly what happened. I got caught in an executive changeover after I sold the movie to the biggest theater chain in the United States.
Well, I do think it's great, though, that I think it's the kind of movie that either somebody thinks it's great or they probably haven't heard of it, but it's that kind of movie that if you get it in front of somebody, it sort of sticks with them. So hopefully it keeps going. Is there any talk of a Blu-ray, do you know?
It was just released in Blu-ray in Germany.
Oh.
But that's the only country it's been released in Blu-ray. Somebody
Hopefully somebody will
told
jump
me
on it
happened.
here. I think maybe, was anybody in the audience who has any questions?
Yes.
Over there?
Thank you for coming, and thank you for giving us your print of this film. It was great.
Yeah, the print looked
Great opening.
fantastic.
Yeah, so, I was curious as the story. Thank you for telling us that story about the executive changeover. I had the same thing happen to me. Fortunately, it was at the script stage, so it wasn't as costly, but the agent's assistant got fired, and then everything went the same. So you might not have an answer, but is there any way to read these situations if you could go back and look into the... Or is it just there's just no way to know?
No, this happened 4 months after we made the decision to sell the movie for $2 million upfront, guarantee now. And he was the president of United Artists Theaters, which was the biggest chain in the United States. The actual theaters was actually going to distribute their own movie. They didn't need the middleman distributor. So it was perfect until he got fired. And the new guy came in and he said, I don't, this is a shit movie. I don't want this movie around, and I'm going to dump it. And that was the end of it. And that's exactly what happened. It happens all the time at script chain stages or actors. If an actor's got a really good deal at Paramount because the president of Paramount loves that actor and wants to do like a 3-picture deal with him, and on the day they're about to sign, that guy, the executive, gets fired, and the new guy doesn't want this deal for $20 million for 3 pictures, and boom, he says no, and that's the end of it. It's not signed yet. So even if it's signed, they took a $2 million loss. You're not an artist, but the movie never came out, never made any noise, it never got a chance. And that's just, the way it is, and it happens a lot to a lot of people. You just got to get really lucky and hope that people who like you stay in power and make your film or distribute your film or buy your script or whatever it is. It's a very common problem, and it happens all the time because there's executive changes at all the studios, all the production companies. And every time that happens, whoever was in favor is no longer in favor. I'm sorry? Right.
Well, the irony is I'm sure that new executive who dumped your film probably got fired 2 years later
Probably
after
did.
that.
Probably
Were there any other questions from the audience? Right down here. KJ?
Thank you so much for being here. This has been really great. And yeah, seeing it on the big screen and that print just looks beautiful. And one of the things that I love about this movie so much are the specificity of different locations. And they're each so unique, and you really can tell that you and your team had an understanding of a specific counterculture, or like not a typical narrative of Los Angeles. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that, either location scouting or the set design, because like even the lobby of the apartment building and his studio, they're all so specific, and it's so believable that people actually live in these spaces and visit these spaces.
So we're dealing with a painter who doesn't really sell much and is getting money from the county to survive. So we're talking about pretty much a poverty kind of person who doesn't have a lot of money. So you start thinking, okay, where would that kind of a person live? Well, he would probably live in, there's a hotel where there's a lot of those types of people who live in that hotel who don't have the money, and they kind of become a little bit of a family, So that's the idea that we came up with, and we started scouting about what kind of a building are we looking for. And because we had an amazing, like I said, production designer, he found the Don Hotel, which is actually downtown. And once I saw it and I saw the sign and everything, I said, wow, that's perfect for us, and it's tall enough, to die if you jump from the top. And the lobby worked out. The lobby was the actual lobby, the real lobby. His room was built on a stage, so his room upstairs was not in the building. But we could shoot outside in the street. We could block the street. It was, an area downtown that was very easy to control. Bring in rain machines for the end, and for that opening shot going up the building, which is an amazing crane shot. Believe it or not, we put one crane on top of another crane because we didn't cover enough of a building to move, which was incredible. So we could do all that at the Don Hotel. We could afford it easily, and we could shut it down. We could shut the street down, and we could own that lobby for, I think we shot maybe 3 days inside and a few days outside, and have a lot of extras outside for Halloween night, costumes, police cars, ambulances, firemen, people, all that stuff. I mean, all that stuff has to be brought in. And we could do it and control the situation in this location. So when you're looking for locations and you want to be able to tell the best story you can, you got to just hang in there until you find exactly the right location for every idea. Sometimes you have to change the idea. I'm not really sure the museum, the Neon Museum was in the original script. There was just a museum maybe in there, and then I found out there's something called the Neon Museum downtown. I went to see it, and it worked perfectly for a stone kind of a scene. So you just have to really work hard with your production people, your location people, your production manager, to be able to get permits and shut this place down and own it so that you can bring in your 100-man crew and, take over the place for however many nights we shot there and however many extras we needed. And then the lobby had to be, obviously decorated by our art design people. And the party where they welcome him back, that was in the same hotel. That was downstairs as well.
Where did the idea for the landlady's dog that's always wearing a wig and glasses come from?
As far as I recall, all I asked for was like a little poodle dog or something that could sit on the counter. and this dog came exactly dressed the way it was, and it was a personality in the movie industry in person that I did not know. Her name is Miss Holly, and I look at her and I'm asked, "Is this okay?" And I said, "Who dressed her? Who got her the sunglasses?" Oh, she comes this way. She comes all dressed with the glasses, the wigs, and everything. I said, "You gotta be kidding me! Who has these kind of pets, and who dresses them up like that?" And this, little old guy was sitting in the corner, and they said, "He does." And they said, "Is this okay, or do you want us to take everything off?" I said, "No, it's fucking perfect." So that was a complete accident of that poodle being dressed the way it was. We didn't do anything except order it, and it came that way.
Any other questions from the audience?
Yes? Yeah. Another crazy, it's very hard to shoot in a slaughterhouse because of, health reasons and things like that. You're bringing a whole crew in there and equipment, and these carcasses are there. I mean, we can touch them, and I mean, it's pretty gross and disgusting. There's blood everywhere, and the slaughterhouse is one of those crazy locations where you better find one, because if not, you're going to have to change your script and everything else. So we had to go and send our location people to all these slaughterhouses, and one said okay. So I went to look at it, and I said, "Can I shoot in the refrigeration area?" And they said, "Yeah." "You don't mind if we shoot next to all your carcasses and move them around a little bit?" "No." And I shot as fast as I could because I thought we were going to get shut down, or some, FDA person was going to jump in and say, "What the hell are you doing next to all these carcasses of beef?" And, it was one of those very, very lucky locations, but that's part of a process of preparing a movie and looking. And trust me, a lot of you don't know this, but there's a lot of slaughterhouses around LA and on the outside of LA. And we visited a ton of them, and none of them would let us do what we wanted, except this one. And we even moved it up in the schedule so we could shoot it as fast as possible before anybody found out. So it was a real slaughterhouse. Yeah, that was a very interesting story, actually. That night he was outside smoking a cigarette and was very nervous. A great actor, and I've used him in other movies. And he was very nervous because some carcasses were being brought in, and he saw real cow carcasses being brought in, and he thought, "Oh my God." But I would never ever ask an actor to do something that I wouldn't do. And that's one thing I do as a director. I never ask anybody to do something that I really wouldn't do. And I would not get into a carcass and come out of its ass. I would just not do that. So that was part of the special effects. We had to build a fake one, which was made of plastic. And it was dressed, and blood was put on it and everything. But it was just a plastic thing that you could put around you. And it was that easy and that simple. But he was so scared. And I didn't tell him that we built a special carcass, and he was just sweating it outside until I finally took pity on him, and I told him, you don't have to get into a real one. We'll build the plastic one for you. And he was extremely relieved. His name is Mario Rocuzzo. He's one of those wonderful character actors that has done like 200 movies in their lives. And I called him last week and told him about the screening. Unfortunately, he's too elderly to come today, but I told him that I would put in a good word for him, because he's one of those wonderful actors. I mean, Marlon Brando would not get into a cow carcass. But Mario did, and thank God that he did, because I have one of those craziest scenes, I think, in the horror world, of somebody being inside a carcass and about to have an electric blade go through them.
Any other questions out there? Right there.
Yes. I've always been a great fan of Hitchcock. And as you know, Hitchcock was always in his movies. There was always a shot of him walking by, or his shadow, and you always knew it was him. It was kind of like an inside joke. And I like that. I thought that was fun. And I love actors. And I've taught acting. So I thought when the time came, it would be kind of fun for me to do this character, which was not that hard for me to do, except, chomping on a cigar. And I just decided to do it for the fun of it. And then it became a thing where I did it on every movie. So I'm in every movie as the same taxi cab, ornery guy with the same hat and the same jacket. They're mine, they're not wardrobe. So every time I make a movie and cab day comes, I just have to go buy some cigars and I'm ready to go.
Any more questions? Over here again.
Oh, hi. Obviously The Exorcist was a big influence, but I also felt intimations of film noir like Point Blank and DOA, except that the guy is already dead at the beginning. And also the way you used the paintings to tell the story I thought was great. I thought that was pretty unique, except maybe for Diva. I've never really seen that in a film. So I was wondering how you've developed or got the idea to incorporate those influences, what films might have influenced you.
This film didn't influence me too much. It was just really The Exorcist that I went by as my inspiration for the film. But all the paintings were, again, part of a production design team. They found a local painter, and we met with him and, what we wanted to do, because every single one of those paintings had to be prepared and ready to go, and different sizes when he sees that all of them have turned into the face. Every single size and everything had to be done. We had like 15 of them or something. And then one had to be rigged, so when he hits it with a knife, blood comes gushing out. Every single thing that happens doesn't happen by itself. It happens after, long production meetings with special effects people, design people. What do we want to do? What do we want these paintings to look like? How are we going to do it? How is blood going to come out of that thing when you hit it with a knife? How? Well, you got to figure it out. And special effects has to come in and figure it out. And then they have to budget it. And then the budget goes to her. And then she comes to me and says, we don't have the money to do all this. What do you want to do? So it's all part of, the creative process of visual storytelling, which is what we love, has an incredible process behind it involving a tremendous amount of people who are extremely skilled at what they do. And it's your job as a filmmaker to find them. And it's your job as a filmmaker to get them to work for you for much less wages than they're normal, because they're so talented.
Well, with that, I think it's time we wrap it up. Could I get a big round of applause for Guy?
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.